The note was trembling in my hands before I even finished reading it. Don't go inside. 4 words. No explanation. No signature. Just my name written at the top in a handwriting I had known for nearly 2 decades. And suddenly the quiet street I had driven down 1,000 times. Didn't feel like home anymore. I had just come back from the doctor. Nothing serious, at least that's what I kept telling myself. Just routine tests. A few concerns about fatigue that had been lingering longer than they should. The kind of thing you brush off for months, until someone in a white coat looks at you, a little too carefully, and says, "Let's run a few more checks." So yeah, I was tired. Mentally more than anything. All I wanted was to get inside, make some tea, and sit in silence for a while. That's when I saw the note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper, slightly crumpled, like it had been placed there in a hurry. For a second, I thought it was a parking warning or some neighborhood notice. But then I saw my name, and I knew exactly who had written it. Same sharp curves, same uneven spacing. I'd seen it on birthday cards, grocery lists, even once on a sticky note stuck to my fridge that read, "You're out of milk again. Unbelievable." It was hers. Sadia, my neighbor of 18 years. If you had asked me that morning who I trusted the most outside of family, I would have said her name without hesitation. We weren't just neighbors, we were stitched into each other's lives. She was there the day I moved in, standing barefoot on her porch with a mug of coffee and that familiar half-smile, like she already knew something about you that you hadn't said yet. "New here?" she asked. I remember laughing. Is it that obvious? It's always obvious. And just like that, we became something more than strangers. Over the years, she became my emergency contact, my late-night conversation partner, my unspoken constant. We didn't need to knock anymore. If her kitchen light was on, I could walk in. If mine was, she'd show up with questions I didn't know I needed to answer. She remembered everything, how I took my tea, the name of my first dog, the date my father passed away. And she never forgot to check on me, especially on days like today. Which is why the note didn't make sense. I looked up from the paper and stared at her house across the street. The curtains were drawn. That wasn't unusual by itself, but something about it felt deliberate. Too still, too quiet. I checked the time. She should have been home. She usually was around this hour. And if she had seen me pull up, she would have walked over already, asking how the doctor visit went, pretending she wasn't worried. That was her way. Caring, but never intrusive. So why didn't she just come talk to me? Why leave this? I read the note again. Don't go inside. No punctuation. No explanation. Just a warning. Or was it? I felt a strange weight settle in my chest. Not fear exactly, more like confusion trying to turn into fear. I glanced at my front door. Everything looked normal. The curtains were where I left them. The porch light was off. No signs of anything out of place. But suddenly I couldn't shake the feeling that something was. Something quiet. Something waiting. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of it. A message. For a split second, I thought it might be Sadia. It wasn't. Just a generic reminder from the clinic about my next appointment. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. This is ridiculous, I muttered under my breath. Maybe she was just being overly cautious. Maybe she saw something suspicious, an open window, a stranger nearby, and panicked. It wouldn't be the first time she overreacted to something small. But still, why not call me? Why not wait? Why write a note and disappear? I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching louder than usual under my shoes. Every sound felt amplified now. I locked the door slowly, my eyes drifting back to her house again. Still no movement. Still those closed curtains. I considered walking over, knocking, asking her directly, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the tone of the note. Or maybe it was the part of me that didn't want to hear an answer I wasn't ready for. Instead, I turned toward my front door. Each step felt heavier than the last. I told myself I was overthinking. That this was nothing. That in a few minutes I'd be inside, shaking my head at how easily I let a piece of paper get to me. But then I reached the porch, and I noticed something. The door wasn't fully closed, not wide open, just slightly ajar. I froze. My hand hovered inches from the handle. I was certain, absolutely certain, I had locked it before I left that morning. I always did. It was habit, muscle memory. Lock, check, walk away. So how? A faint draft slipped through the narrow gap, brushing against my fingers. The house inside looked the same from here. Quiet, still, familiar. But that feeling, it was back again. Stronger this time. My grip tightened around the note still clutched in my other hand. Don't go inside. I swallowed hard. For the first time since reading it, I actually listened. And just as I was about to step back, I heard something. From inside, a soft sound. Not loud, not clear, but enough. Enough to make my heart stop. I stood there, frozen between the door and the driveway. Between trust and doubt. Between the life I knew and something I didn't understand yet. And in that moment, one question echoed louder than everything else. Why would Sadia warn me about my own home? And that's when I noticed something else. Something I hadn't seen before. Right there, on the inside of the door, was another note, facing outward. As if it had been left for me to find. If I ever made it this far, I reached for the handle. Slowly, carefully, my breath barely steady enough to hold. And just before I pushed the door open, I realized the handwriting on the second note wasn't hers. The handwriting on the second note wasn't hers. For a moment, my mind refused to process it. I was still standing on the porch. The first note crumpled in my fist, my other hand hovering over the door handle. The world felt narrowed down to that small gap between the door and the frame, and the piece of paper taped just inside. Different strokes, slower, uneven in a way that didn't feel familiar at all. Not Sadia, which meant someone else had been inside my house. I didn't push the door open right away. Instead, I leaned closer, squinting through the gap, trying to read what I could without stepping in. The light inside was dim, just the faint glow from the living room window, but it was enough. Enough to make out the words. Please, don't panic. My chest tightened. It was written like a message meant to calm me. But it did the opposite, because whoever wrote that note knew I would see it. They knew I would come home. They knew I would hesitate. My fingers finally touched the door. It creaked softly as I pushed it open a few inches more, just enough to reach in and peel the note off the inside surface. The air inside felt different, stale almost, like a room that had been closed for too long, or disturbed too recently. I stepped in, slowly, carefully. Every instinct was telling me to turn around, to walk back to the car, to call someone, anyone, but I couldn't, not without understanding. The house looked normal. That was the worst part. The couch was in place. The cushions were exactly how I'd left them. My keys from yesterday still sat in the ceramic bowl by the entrance. No broken locks, no shattered windows, no obvious sign that anyone had been there. And yet, someone had. I looked down at the second note in my hand. Please, don't panic. I didn't know how else to tell you. Tell me what? My heartbeat was so loud now it felt like it was echoing in the walls. Hello? I called out. My voice sounded Chuzhou, like it didn't belong to me. No response. Just silence, but not empty silence. The kind that feels watched. I moved deeper into the living room, my steps slow, measured. Every corner felt sharper now. Every shadow heavier. I glanced toward the hallway. The bedroom door was closed. The kitchen light was off. Everything looked untouched. But then, I noticed something small, on the table. A mug. It wasn't mine. I knew that immediately. Different shape. Different color. A dark blue ceramic with a thin crack along the rim. And it wasn't empty. There was still a little tea inside. Fresh enough that the surface hadn't fully settled. Someone had been here. Recently. My grip tightened around the note. I didn't know how else to tell you. A memory flickered in my mind. Sadia, earlier this week. She had come over in the evening, quieter than usual. She kept glancing around, like she was distracted by something she couldn't quite name. You ever feel like something's off? She had asked suddenly. I remember shrugging. Off how? She hesitated, then shook her head. Never mind, it's probably nothing. I didn't push her. I wish I had. My phone buzzed again. This time I almost dropped it. Another message. And this time, it was from her. Sadia, did you see the note? My throat went dry. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed back. I'm inside. The reply came almost instantly. Why would you go in? Something in the way she wrote that. It wasn't just concern. It was fear. I turned slowly, scanning the room again, as if I might suddenly notice something I'd missed before. Because I needed to understand, I typed. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. Listen to me carefully. Are you alone? I didn't answer right away, because for the first time since stepping inside, I wasn't sure. A faint sound came from down the hallway. Soft, almost like a shift in weight, or a floorboard settling. I held my breath. Every part of me went still. Are you alone? Her message still glowed on the screen. I typed back slowly. I don't think so. The response this time took longer. Too long. And when it came, it didn't make anything better. I tried to tell you before, she wrote. But you didn't notice. My heart started pounding harder. What are you talking about? Another pause. Another long, heavy silence. And then, they've been inside your house before. I felt something inside me drop. A cold, hollow feeling that spread through my chest. No, I whispered under my breath. That's not possible. But then, the small things, the misplaced objects, the times I thought I forgot where I left something. The feeling that I wasn't always alone. I had ignored all of it. Who? I typed, my hands shaking now. Who's been here? This time, the reply came in fragments, like she was struggling to say it. I don't know exactly who, but I've seen them. A chill ran through me. Seen who? And then, her final message appeared. Someone who knows you. At that exact moment, the bedroom door at the end of the hallway creaked open. Slowly, deliberately. I looked up from my phone, my entire body locking in place. The hallway stretched out in front of me, darker now somehow, heavier. And in the narrow gap of that opening door, I saw movement. Not clear, not fully visible. Just enough to know I wasn't alone. My phone slipped slightly in my hand as another message came through from Sadia. One last message. Whatever you do, don't let them know you've seen them. The door opened a little wider, and I realized something that made everything worse. Whoever was inside wasn't surprised to see me. They had been waiting.